Hello, and welcome to the brand new episode of The Film Angle. My name is Kris.
And I'm Alex.
Alex, it's so nice to have you back from your holiday away in Greece. We've had a week off, so it's really good to have you back and talk about the different types of movies that we have caught up with in the last couple of weeks. I think you've been cramming in since you've got back from holiday, right?
Absolutely. It's been difficult. When you're in the sun and you're just enjoying, sipping mojitos on a beach.
Yeah, screens
It's
don't
difficult.
exist.
Yeah, screens don't exist. Like my screen time went down a lot. I had this idea to maybe watch a couple of films on my phone at night, maybe, or watch one on the plane, and it just didn't happen. It just didn't happen. So yeah, I've been back, and I've been cramming as much cramming as many films as I can into my eyeballs. So but it's been good. I love watching films. It's just like when you have a little period away from films, you come back and you watch films. You're like, man, films are cool.
Yeah, I've gone a little bit more consistent in the last couple of years than I used to. I would always have like that 2 to 3 month slump where I'd be like really sporadic film watching, and then something like I watch something naturally on my television, or I go to see something, and then it reignites that like vigor, that love for film again. And then you're just back on it again. But recently I've just kind of been consistent weekly, just kind of so many as we're delving into like a list like this, the BFI top 100. You're consistently reminded of all the different facets that exist outside of this list, because you're getting to know all these different directors, and you're just like, I need to watch as much before I die as possible. This is a time of the essence sort of thing. I want to cover all the grounds, it can be a little bit like daunting sometimes, but I really like that it's just like we're into this sort of entity that is all sort of like encompassing, and we'll never get around all of it, and that's more exciting than something that like I can see the end of the line of. I've always have something to chew upon, and that's great.
Yes. And like a lot of the films we're watching at the moment have so much kind of historical context to them as well. So like so it's more than just that like, oh, I've watched a film and I enjoyed it. It's kind of like, how was this film made? What did this film inspire? Like, and like, how did it come to be the way it is? And I think that's really interesting for when we speak about Metropolis later. But I kind of I've rooted through some old stuff, and I found one of my old kind of cinema books from university. One of those ones that you get a letter that says you should definitely buy all these books for your film course, and then you never actually use them properly. But now I'm quite grateful that I have it, and it's this big kind of Argos catalog sized history of cinema, and I just like flicking through it, going to the index. Like I looked up like Metropolis, and I was reading about Fritz Lang and stuff, and I was like, damn, I like all this kind of amazing film knowledge was right there in front of me. And I've been so ignorant to watch some of it, but I think that's where the BFI kind of series is kind of helping me go. A little bit like, you're an idiot for not watching all this stuff when you have more time. But now I'm just like, I'm happy. I'm happy I'm catching up with some of these kind of blind spots.
That's growing up and evolving with your love of film, and even in 10 years time, like your relationship will be slightly different again. It's always so dependent on where you are in life, and I think that's a crime of being in your late 20s, is like you kind of have this very like retrospective sort of introverted look at the past, and we kind of like to, you're moving away from your adolescent period where the cinema is exciting. You're getting all this sort of like vibrant, the giallo, the Tarantino-esque stuff that really invigorates and excites us, and you kind of move into this period of starting to look at a bit more older reflective cinema, and I think that's just like a natural progression as like growing up, really.
Yeah, I do feel sorry for my film lecturers though. I feel like they definitely did try to mold your tastes in a way, and I
can
think,
imagine.
I'm not speaking for everybody in my film kind of studies, but I don't think I was ready to be molded 100%. Like I could be bent a little bit, but I was, I was too stuck on kind of like mainstream. I was, the film bro films, and at the time it was very much, I loved all the Marvel stuff, and I didn't really kind of like venture too much out. I remember we did a foreign cinemas module, and I didn't like put much interest into it, which is kind of foolish. But yeah, This is kind of a weird start. I didn't expect my kind of a philosophical musing about kind of my film taste and how it's evolved.
Yeah.
But there you go.
Opening the book of Alex today.
Yeah. I'm happy I'm being molded now.
Good, good. But we're not going to talk straight into. Why is that funny?
I don't know.
Are you easily molded? We're going to talk BFI later. We're going to talk about Metropolis later on in the episode. But I thought it'd be really fun to sort of. I caught up with you in the last week, and obviously, so the last month marked the 50th anniversary of the legendary kung fu actor Bruce Lee and his tragic passing in 1973. Obviously, like a real genius, not only as a screen presence and martial artist, but also was a real driving force in bridging Western and Eastern cinema together. I think it's fair to say. So we decided to catch up and celebrate that legacy by visiting his final film, and often regarded as his best film as well, I think. It was released 1 month after his passing, and boy, does his legacy lean over this film. Despite how goofy and often hilarious fun it is, there's a lot going on here. And that film, of course, is Enter the Dragon. This was a rewatch for me in the sense that, like, when I was a kid, I had seen this peripherally. My dad would always have it on TV. I've watched it a couple of times in its entirety. But, I haven't seen it as a grown adult coming in and appreciating, who the context behind this and the influence of blaxploitation film. It almost has this James Bond, Roger Moore period. Okay, so the story revolves around Lee, ironically, played by Bruce Lee, who is
I thought that.
a Shaolin martial artist who is sent by the British government, of all governments, to infiltrate the operations of an opium lord on a fortress island under the guise of being a contestant in a martial arts tournament. So there's also attending the tournament are ex-Vietnam veterans Roper and Williams, who are looking to win the tournament to get themselves out of their own like individual financial issues. So I had seen this film as a kid, as I said. I couldn't remember a lot about it, and glad we went to see a screening of this with actually like a full audience. It was quite poignant. It had an opening sort of introduction from Lee's daughter, who was kind of just expressing the gratitude to the fans and the legacy behind this film, how much the movie meant to her father. And it was a really, really nice way to kind of settle into the film before. And yeah, it was all kind of fun and games from there on. It's just this amazing opening 20 minutes with this really colorful, all these costumes that are vibrant reds and these really the score that kind of is kind of goofy and fun and tongue-in-cheek and very like repetitive, but it really slinks you into this film, and it's great. It's kind of like 10 different genres at once.
Yes,
and it's just it's amazing. You think what else we could have got from Lee if he didn't tragically pass away in his late 20s? We would have got so much more interesting, probably well-regarded legacy films that we'd probably still be watching today.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, my personal history with this is actually that it is my first Bruce Lee film. So again, another kind of ignorance there somewhere. And yeah, my first time watching Enter the Dragon, which I rented a copy of. So I did watch it I didn't watch it in the same kind of cinema experience you did, but kind of watched it in the comfort of my home. But really, really, really enjoyed it. And I think you're right about the opening 20 minutes just sets the stage in such an interesting and really fast-paced way. You've got Bruce Lee, who's at the top of his game. You've got, like you said, the British government, the international waters kind of like, I was a bit confused for a minute because like he was British, but then they were in San Francisco, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah, I assume British government, and then it would have been like the kind of British Hong Kong, as it was for a while before, pretty recently.
Yeah.
So that's why there's like an island that's like half in British waters or whatever. But yeah, you have that setup of this tournament, of this villain. Not only is he a bad guy who's kind of forgotten the values of this kind of temple, he also killed Bruce Lee's sister, and you've got this kind of, you're straight away sent off to this competition, and sets the stage for like a really interesting film. Like you said, it's like this mix of martial arts, blaxploitation, and then almost like a little bit kind of like James Bondy spy stuff, because
Yes,
definitely
there
some
is a
of
lot of that.
the sets inside of the island, inside of the mansion, where they're kind of making drugs and sex trafficking people, feels like the kind of like an old kind of James Bond underground lair set, doesn't it? Like,
Oh yeah,
uh,
yeah, and our villain even has like he's a one-handed villain who is stroking a cat.
yeah,
It's all of that fabric's in there, and there's a lot of like 1960s television in here as well. Like it definitely borrows from the previous decade. I love when we enter this competition. There's this big banquet in the main hall where we're meeting all the contestants and we're meeting all like the brides and all the people that work there, and all of this stuff that's going on that's just filling the set is really really funny. Not in a way that detracts from the film, but in a way that's cute. From today's standard, like we got these two guys that are literally carrying a lobster fish tank just around the room in circles and not doing anything. Like we're watching this 10-minute sequence, and that's all these guys are
yes.
doing. I mean, the decorative value of that set piece is really really fun.
And you
And
don't kind of notice just how kind of like kind of staged it all is, until obviously our villain walks in and everybody stops.
yes,
And
yeah.
then when he leaves again, everybody just carries on. He just It's just the strangest kind of thing, but it's brilliant.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. It really puts a smile on your face from start to finish. It is a product of its time, but in a way that like makes it interesting, like a blend of Hong Kong cinema and Hollywood sensibilities. It really
Mm.
does feel like a marrying of the two different influences in there, and that's what kind of makes it unique. Um, Lee choreographed the film himself, all the fighting choreography. I think that's not really a surprise to hear. And there's this real particular care that struck me that was put in to make sure in those like action sequences that there's no generic one size fits all fighting style for these characters. Like every character of considerable sort of like significance to the story has a completely individualized style of fighting that is tied to their personas, and that's what I really I
Mm.
got out of this. Um, with Roper and Williams, who are the other two guys, like they have their own like Roper's a little bit more cocky, and Williams has a bit more of a stocky, like heavy sort of style of fighting, and obviously Lee has his iconic sort of like patient, quick jabs and throws a lot of power into these certain moments. And I really appreciated Lee's lack of vanity in this film, even though we're all here to see Bruce Lee fight. It's a Bruce Lee movie. In fact, for a good 20 minutes of the film, Lee isn't even around. He lets us spend like time with Roper and Williams to really build up a connection with them, for inevitably when all these characters cross paths in the end of the story. So there is real like time and effort, even though this is quite a quick, fast-paced film. There's a lot of effort put into character design and everything, just so that we kind of build up a rapport of everybody. So I appreciated that.
Yes, yeah, no, absolutely. I did like Roper, and I liked, like you said, the different kind of fighting styles. However, I did find it interesting that whenever we kind of see Roper fight, you don't quite see it. It's quite close up,
Oh
but I
yeah,
thought,
sure.
oh, maybe John Saxon, isn't it, who
Yeah.
plays Roper? Maybe he's not the fighter. Maybe he can't perform these kind of moves. But I had a quick Google, and I think he's like a black belt in like judo and karate. So like,
I
I've
didn't
just
notice it quite as much as you, but I believe it. I believe it.
so he can fight. I just thought like it wasn't as like when he moved, you just kind of saw
Well,
like the top of
you're sharing the screen with probably some of the greatest martial artists in
yeah.
the world. I guess it
When you see
can be.
Bruce Lee do his thing, maybe it was kind of like it just doesn't look the same when
Oh,
you do your thing. But yeah, no, I did like him, and Williams as well, played by Jim Kelly again. Just yeah, it really interesting to kind of like just bring in these two random characters who are kind of like Vietnam veterans, and one's a gambler, and one's a bit of a player,
mhm.
and
That adds a
and
little bit of seasoning into the film, doesn't it? Like it gives you a little bit more to grasp onto.
yes, yeah, yeah. But also just you kind of like emphasizes the kind of international element of that film, I guess. You
Yeah.
have your three leads, and you have a white guy, a black guy, and an Asian guy. And kind of the international nature of that competition as well.
And I think
Martial artists.
that's the lasting impact that this film has, and such a great legacy for Lee as a fellow filmmaker and an actor, is that he could leave his legacy behind, that he was really trying his best to make cinema for everybody, and tried to bring in his own lineage and elements of culture that he picked up along the way during his life, and kind of bring it all together. And he obviously was committed to just making a great film, in the way that Gene Kelly in the 50s was just committed to making the greatest musical set pieces. In a way, Lee's doing that here, but with kung fu, and it's really, really, really cool to see.
Yeah. Here's a criticism that nobody's ever heard us say on the film film angle before. Film is too short. It is too short.
It's so fun that you don't want it to end.
Yeah, and like it just kind of, I just wanted, because the story is so, like quite fun and interesting and entertaining. I just wanted to see kind of like a bit more of like the fallout. I wanted to see Bruce Lee engage with kind of, I guess, Williams had died by the end of the film. We didn't really get much time with him, but, more time with Roper and kind of develop that, whatever that kind of relationship was. So I definitely feel like maybe it breezed by a little too fast.
I like the
definitely had room to kind of expand if it wanted to.
Yeah.
But that's a very minor criticism, and almost like it's so good I wanted more.
Well, that's the best sort of like criticism you could ever have, really. It speaks volumes for the film in itself. I think it just has such a cool vibe to the movie that you just kind of don't want it to end, and it's a really good like party movie. I mean, I'd love to watch this with a big group of friends and get some beers in and everything. This is it's perfect for that sort of thing. But I quite liked actually how the relationship was kind of superficial. It kind of was made the characters cooler in the way that they could just kind of look across at each other, and they both know what's up. They both know that, yeah. Like, what I mean? They're both siding with each other without having to, like, there's a head nod there. It's kind of like the big T-Rex and the little Velociraptor in Jurassic World, where they both curtsy each other, like, yeah, we know what's up. No, I'm not comparing. That's a terrible moment in that movie. But yeah, there's something cool about that. And the final fight sequence is so over the top, so funny. The boss fight between Lee and the Opium Lord, and obviously because it's this Captain Hook effect where he's only got one hand, but he's got this whole museum room of ancient martial arts shrines where he can like add these different attachments onto his hand as if he was like Captain Hook or something like that. And there's this big fight sequence in a whole room of mirrors that's quite fun. And it's so goofy, over the top, but it's exactly what you want from this type of film. I agree with you. I would have loved to seen more tournament stuff. I thought we were going to get more like, I like Jean-Claude Van Damme's Bloodsport because it took the time to pace out the tournament. You actually knew he was fighting who when. You knew there was a semi-final and there was a final, and the movie kind of ran along with the tournament, and I would have liked to see a little bit more of that, understood like the mechanics of that, just from a nerdy point of view.
I agree. I was kind of looking forward to the tournament itself because I thought there was going to be more of it, and I think it's always fun to have that kind of concept in a film, and but also in between the tournament he's off sneaking around, but yeah, ultimately, yeah, you're right. More tournament stuff would have been good. More kind of maybe, I was surprised when they brought in the henchman who had killed his sister so early on in the tournament, and then Bruce Lee just kills him. I was expecting maybe that to be kind of developed, so it was like a more of a kind of tense thing, but that kind of ended quite fast.
But it was still cathartic because he kicked the crap out of that guy.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Slow-mo freeze. Yeah, all that sort of stuff was involved here to really kind of like make sure that every hit that Lee landed on that guy hurt. Even
Oh
just to
yeah.
watch it. So it was great.
Yeah, no, it is good, and also kind of like I do like the fact that it happened so early on because as soon as you know that he killed a sister and he's off to the tournament, it's going to happen at some point. So like, get it out of the way
Yeah.
is also an interesting thing. But yeah, I think there's another half an hour to 45 minutes that could be added in, but yeah, not. It makes me sound like I didn't like it because it was too short. I just think like it could have been so. It is epic, but you could have added more, and it wouldn't have taken away.
No, I completely agree with you. But again,
not every film you can say that for.
No, really,
not every film.
Especially films that come out today. I mean, we're I think we're on the 180 average mark for big, serious award contending films nowadays. It's certainly big blockbusters. So yeah, I think films like that could learn to be a little bit more lean. Sometimes you can get the job done really well 90 minutes, and I think it's always a good thing to leave the audience wanting more. I think that's it's kind of a negative if you really loved it and you wanted more, but it's yeah. I mean, that's the power of it, baby. That's it. So
yeah,
I
massive
think
legacy on video games. So I read, and also you could kind of tell.
Like that Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat sort of style. Yeah, of course.
But also like even just like to today's like modern AAA games where you're just kind of, you are the fighting combat is just here's a group of people being flung at you, you counter and you punch. And I mean, that is kind of what a lot of the action scenes here are. I'm kind of, stripping it down to its bare elements, but there's a lot of scenes where Bruce Lee is in the center of the camera and just people are running in from the sides trying to kill him, and he's just kicking them away. But I just thought, like, man, like video games, they're to this day, that is essentially most kind of AAA video games kind of do that kind of style.
I love that sequence that you're talking about where there's just a sea of guys dressed in white who are throwing themselves like at Lee, but like there's just this big crowd behind, and you see one at a time coming from the crowd, kind of in a turn-taking dance choreography sort of style. But you don't actually, it feels like the crowd is so massive and people come so frequently that you don't actually feel like they're actually coming from the crowd. It feels like almost like when the cartoon, when a character emerges from something, you're like, where did that guy come from? So I really appreciated that too. And just the physicality of Lee. I mean, you just look at the guy and you're like, holy God. I mean, like, you're probably the fittest guy and he ever lived. You just complete lean muscle, obviously completely self-disciplined. And you're watching somebody on screen that you believe in. You have to see, you get loads of these movies, but like sometimes it's a schlocky overweight guy and he's like, we're meant to believe that he can take out like 50 guys, and I'm watching Lee, I'm like, yeah, I would not go near that guy.
And it's interesting as well because like he isn't showy in this, apart from maybe the fighting, but like not in a, like, it all feels believable. But
I
like
think he just genuinely wants to make a good movie.
Yeah, but like he doesn't look like a cool guy. Like he doesn't look.
He's got like Avatar Aang vibe about him.
Yeah, he's just kind of, I don't know. Like obviously he's got this like dorky looking haircut.
Yeah,
but like there's something about the way he holds himself that just makes you go, yeah, this guy is the coolest guy here.
Yeah. There's a modesty to him. I mean, like even when they're traveling to the island at the beginning, he's the guy that he's not talking to anybody. He's on a mission, and he's just like, but not in a stoic way. He's just like keeping himself to himself. And if anybody starts any trouble, he'll be there to stop it.
This is what Tom Cruise tries to do. I think he tries to do this. It doesn't always pull it off.
So there you have it, Bruce Lee, the original Tom Cruise, but better. So yeah, I think I think we both really, really enjoyed catching up with Enter the Dragon, and kind of keen to go back and maybe learn a little even more about Bruce Lee. I've seen, I think it's The Way of the Dragon. I think it's the other one I've seen. I remember not being as great as this, but I'm definitely keen to catch up.
Fist of Fury supposed to be.
Fist of Fury supposed to be quite. It is.
Have you seen that one?
I haven't seen it. I've only seen those two.
Another one. I need to. Like I said, that was my first Bruce Lee. So, this is the good thing about the kind of BFI thing as well. Like every time I watch something that's kind of new and different, I'm like, now I just want to watch more of these types of films. So, at some point we're gonna have to catch up on all the martial arts films now, all the Bruce Lee films.
Absolutely, got 2 new fans right here.
Hell yeah. So another film that we both caught up on, which I think we'll probably talk about briefly, just because we wanted to talk about Medusa Deluxe, because it's a new kind of British, I think, debut feature film.
Yes, it is. Yeah,
which went on Mubi.
Thomas Hardiman directed it. Yeah,
exactly. And unfortunately, I don't think either of us like overly loved it. But that's not to say we shouldn't talk about it, because I don't want this, like we kind of said from the start with the podcast, that we didn't just want it to be like a just shit on films that we don't like kind of thing. But I think it is interesting still to talk about Thomas Hardiman and his new film, because it is a new British independent film and a new voice. And although this one we weren't in love with, it's not a bad film, but definitely like a new voice in cinema that should be worth checking out, because it has got critical acclaim. So we're just two of its detractors, but
well, sort of. I think the reviews are like high mixed on this one.
Yeah,
it seems to be. But there are people that really love this.
Yeah. But it also kind of like brings into this idea, and a lot of films kind of do this now, like this one take for a whole film. But it's, the idea of a one take, and it's usually more digital these days. But I feel like there's a lot of kind of modern films which are trying to pull this off. And to be fair, like Thomas Hardiman pulls it off. Like it's a brilliant one take film. I just don't know whether the story, which is kind of like a murder mystery set within a hairstylist competition.
Yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Which is really interesting. Like that's an interesting premise, and obviously allows for like an interesting, quirky bunch of characters to come in and out of this. But it did make me wonder, like,
usually see represented in film.
Yeah, and it's kind of this kind of grungy London underground art scene almost. But it just like. That is so interesting in itself, and the murder mystery element is so interesting in itself, that I don't think it warrants then the gimmick of a one take. And I wasn't sure if it added much to the film.
Yeah.
Because the film itself is quite theatrical, and then obviously having the one take to it really does feel like you are just kind of watching a play. I don't know if you...
I completely agree with that. I think the one take thing is very problematic, because I just think at times it can be an anti-cinematic way to tell a story. I think that something that came out, was it last year Boiling Point came out, or was that 21 that came out? I mean, it was last year.
That was our first episode of the podcast, Chris.
So it was 22. Right. How could I forget?
It was literally, I think we spoke about that on our first episode.
I have like a filing cabinet of three of the previous episodes, and then they just go into the archive in my brain afterwards. So forgive me if I ever like repeat myself. But Boiling Point, I felt, had a really good reason to justify choosing that way to tell the story, because it's a high, no pun intended, pressure cooker environment where there's a lot of high stakes. It's very in the moment. Kitchen environments and cooking and working in a high end London restaurant really lends itself to that format. And I think that was the one time where I think if it had cuts between it would have actually detracted from the experience. And that's really, really rare that I would say that from a long take film. I don't know Medusa Deluxe has a reason to do it. I don't think that there's anything in the story or that really lends itself to telling the story in this way. I think the environment is very interesting. There's this sort of concert hall backstage area that they're working in has this Lynch feeling to it. I think it's got a lot to do with the lighting. It's very dimly lit. It lends itself to that sort of macabre murder mystery setting. But apart from that, you're just too busy thinking about, right, that character's left the room. They're probably gone off getting changed somewhere between. You think about these things whenever it feels like a play. You get too bogged down in the machinations of the thing, and you forget about where you are in the story. And I will agree with you. I think the story is not that interesting. I think it starts off kind of. I think it starts the wrong place by having it take place after the murder, where we're trying to retroactively attach ourselves to the characters, and
Mm.
we've got no face to the person who was murdered. So we're hearing about them in hearsay, and it's just really hard to kind of latch on to these people as they kind of aggressively throw themselves at each other, and it's also kind of predictable. I mean, where it ends up going in the end, you kind of see it from a third into the film, and yeah, we're spent more time with just learning about these people and their relationships with each other, and I wasn't that interested.
No, I agree, and I think this is probably where the one takes away from it. I think if you were cutting around and you had an interesting editing style and being able to frame shots in different ways, rather than just kind of floating around these characters, I do think it would have maybe lended to kind of regaining my interest more. But you kind of like just kind of settle into the film a bit, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
we're going from these characters and what they think about the murder and who they think did it to these characters who have a different perspective. Yeah, again, not we aren't just bringing this up to kind of criticize. I think what has been shown is that Thomas Hardiman is a very kind of um, adept filmmaker in terms of
100%.
pulling off the one shot because it works. Did it work for the? Does the take work for the story? Not so much, but like I think it's a really interesting first debut,
Yeah,
unlike most things I've seen. I'm interested to see what he does next. This one didn't fully work for me, but there's you can see the skill and talent in there for sure.
were there any cuts in this film? I know a lot of these films do play trickery, but I thought I read that this film was legitimately a one shot.
Oh, did you? I thought there was a couple of bits where I'm like, I think that was a cut. But
Probably
maybe
most of
that's
these
my
movies
modern
do.
mind trying to kind of because like with Extraction, they're like we have a 15-minute uncut action scene, and when you watch it, you're like you do, but like
Yeah.
I can see where you cut as like somebody walks past the camera.
Yeah, and 1917, it was very obvious. We would like go past the camera would go past a trench and it would fade to black, and then it come out when it comes past the other side of the trench, we know that's a cut there.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think I probably agree with you. Yeah, I think that I think it's a really good debut because it's you can't underestimate how hard it is to organize something like that and choreograph scenes around people and constantly on their mark and shooting it in an interesting way. And I think he does do that. And I think you're right. Yeah, there is a flair there that definitely has the recipe for a filmmaker who is definitely worth keeping an eye on. So yeah, I completely agree with you. I just think perhaps it's just a little bit of a tone death experience. I think especially the final sequence when the movie ends and we get a dance sequence, and it feels a little bit. It misses the mark. It feels not earned. It feels like
yeah.
this is the thing that we do in movies now. We put a jarring juxtaposed dance sequence in because it's cool.
It
It
does
felt
seem
like
to have been a lot of dance sequences in films recently. I mean, the one I'm
I liked
thinking
it
most
in
of is After Yang.
I liked it in After Yang. I liked that.
Yeah.
I thought that was really really cool. Do you know who choreographed that scene in After Yang in the opening?
No, no.
In After Sun, our favorite film of last year, the
Mm.
older version of Sophie, um, she
Oh.
choreographed that whole sequence in After Yang.
Oh, there you go. There
Yeah,
you
I thought
go.
it was a
That's
really
cool.
interesting piece of trivia. But yeah, it felt a little bit out of place here. I was just like, oh, we're supposed to be on board here. Like, yeah, ugh. I felt a little bit overconfident for. But I guess that's the world that we're representing. The hairstyling world is quite extroverted. Like I
Mm.
said, quite this underground grungy um, thing that have these unique personalities, and maybe it kind of evoked that in a way. And like some of these guys have really interesting sort of like personas, and they're all very at each other, and it's quite fun to see some of those sort of antagonistic moments where we get a little bit of history and feuds that have been kind of melded into the film. But yeah, I think it was just kind of a downward sort of slope the whole way through, and by the end, I was kind of just done with it.
Yeah.
Not to detract. I think there's definitely flair and there's reasons to keep this guy on your radar, but yeah, it's definitely not going to get in my sort of top tier for this year.
No, I don't think so either. But yeah, I always love watching kind of like new, interesting debuts on Mubi. And they seem to be picking up a lot of films at the moment. Not a new, interesting debut, but Sofia Coppola's Priscilla's just been picked up by
I'm very interested
Mubi.
in that, yeah.
Yeah, so, yeah. And was it Can? I think a British filmmaker. A film that sounds quite interesting called How to Have Sex.
Yes.
A film you probably need to watch, Chris.
What are you saying? I have no idea the implications of what you just said. Okay. I'll leave it.
It's a film title that makes its own jokes. I'm really sorry.
No. Right. Laughing aside here, I've heard good things about this film.
I'm really excited to see it. Really excited. It sounds almost like an independent female version of The In-Betweeners that's a little bit more kind of ethereal. The In-Betweeners movie.
Oh yeah. I don't think the In-Betweeners movie would ever get Mubi funded or 24 funded. Yeah, no, I'm very excited for that. There's a lot of interesting films like that coming, and Mubi are just kind of gladly that they're just kind of growing, and we're seeing the Mubi logo show up more on our cinema screens whenever we go see films. So again, this is not like a promo thing or anything like that. It's just
the last 10 minutes have been funded by Mubi.
It definitely seems that way. But it's just exciting to see that these sort of types of films are just getting a little bit of a wider release, and we're getting these production houses, these distributors that have the money to kind of make more people see these movies and not just white nerds like us sitting in our living room. So it's great.
I am actually sitting in my living room.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying.
Which is a different space for me today. So
yeah, usually you're in your office with the terrible window backlight. So your face silhouetted. I could see a lot more of you today, and it's a little bit much. I mean, you currently are doing the Judi Dench cat stretch from Cats. So yeah, that's a bit of imagery.
What a horrific
image!
What a horrific image.
Well, Judi Dench or you? I think
both. Judi Dench and Cats.
Oh dear.
Just me in general. All right then. Let's get on to the big BFI release.
Yeah.
BFI Blindspot.
Released 95 years ago.
Yeah, from the greatest films of all time list. Yeah, man, it's a film that is
nearly 100 years old.
Nearly 100 years old. I thought for a minute it was the oldest film I'd ever seen. The film's called Metropolis, by the way. You might have heard of it. But then I realized the Buster Keaton silent film that we watched earlier this year.
Yeah.
The General, that's it. Thank you, because I was kind of slowing. I was like, what is it bloody called again? I really love that. I got to
add some value to this podcast.
Yeah, that is the oldest film I've seen. So this came out a year after. It is directed by Fritz Lang, and it is a kind of on the end of like the German Expressionist run of silent film cinema, and is quite the epic sci-fi.
Yeah, I mean, really is epic, isn't it? It's like it feels contemporary even today.
Yeah, so epic that it took a whole year to film, apparently. And just overblown on its budget. It destroyed a German film studio in the kind of cost of it all, and and then released to kind of middling reviews, I believe, before kind of being reevaluated, as many kind of epics usually are.
Like most of the films that we cover on this list, yeah.
Yeah. Give it 50 years and The Flash will be up.
Wouldn't hold my breath on that one.
That's what they said about Metropolis. And yeah, is another place. Silent film, silent cinema is a kind of, it is the original cinema, but it is one of those places that many people don't really go to, including myself. I've not seen many silent films at all. But then I'm always dumbfounded and blown away whenever I see something like Metropolis, and I'm just like, this, like, you think of silent cinema as something ancient and something that maybe you can't get too involved in because there isn't dialogue and stuff like that, even though kind of there is because of the text. But yeah, this was an epic. This was an absolute epic, and it has, it's a relatively simple plot line, but it's long, and it has twists and turns, and yeah, it's very grandiose.
Yeah, you kind of like, I come at it from a point of view where I love, especially with these amazing restorations that we get of these older films now, and seeing these people blown up on 4K that are on my television screen, that are from 95 years ago. It blows my mind away. I love the historical context behind that, and you just kind of think that whenever these movies are as successful as they are and they're so involving, you're kind of like, well, did they kind of peak from the beginning? I mean, did they kind of have it right? Was it its purest form, a potent art? Was when we had the no talkies, the silent pictures, and we have these probably some of the most gorgeous images still on film. You could pause any moment of this film and turn it into some amazing German expressionist cubism art and put it on your wall. It's incredible. But we're using big words and heavy themes here, but this movie is really accessible to all people. It's quite. I really think you could show anybody this and they'd be blown away. And it's really, it's not overly complicated. There's subtext here and there's interesting things that you can pick apart from this film, like every film on this list. But it is a simple to follow, straightforward story about oppression and the rebellion.
Yeah. Basically, Metropolis is this giant city where the wealthy live carefree, and everything is this. We've also, Metropolis is essentially Coruscant from Star Wars. Star Wars is obviously, Coruscant, the planet, is very heavily inspired by Metropolis. It is essentially that. But then the kind of underground to this giant city is full of kind of workers who are essentially slaves, who are just cannon fodder for kind of making the city run, and there's no care as to their kind of well-being or anything like that. And the main story follows the son of the kind of, I guess he's like president of Metropolis. He is the
leader. Yeah.
He's the leader, and the son, who kind of spots a beautiful woman with a group of children, kind of coming into his luxury garden as they're kind of almost like on a school trip, seeing like, look at how the wealthy live, and he's so kind of besotted by her, he has to follow her and try find her, and in doing so he uncovers just how kind of horrible it is down in the working class underground, and he witnesses many people die trying to power up the city, and after kind of telling his father about this, who's quite dismissive of it because he knows what's going on, really. He decides to continue to find the woman and starts a rebellion, I guess. In the process, as this is happening, the woman that he loves, once it's found out that she is the kind of object of his affection, is her likeness is used for like this AI robot worker thing. And that worker kind of infiltrates the working class, because they already see her as this kind of omnipresent leader anyway, before she was a robot, and the creator of the robot wants to destroy Metropolis. So in this kind of idea of rebellion against repression, what she really wants is kind of the destruction of the city itself. So there's many kind of things going on here. I'm not really explaining it super well,
No.
but it's really interesting in that way, and is very, very much about class and kind of oppression and slavery. I don't think it fully figures it out in the end, because our main character is a wealthy son of the oppressor, and the end of the film is this idea that the head, which is the wealthy, and the hands, which are the workers, need to come together and be joined by the heart, which for me doesn't really work, because the head, the oppressor, our main character's dad was trying to drown the workers' kids 10 minutes before the end of the film, where they all decide they're all going to live happily ever together. But
I think what it's more trying to say is that there needs to be heart in the actions of what both sides do for there to be a sort of equilibrium between the both of them. But it just
I mean, some people are
nice.
Some people are beyond saving,
he's probably killed like thousands of people by that point.
I definitely try to kill their kids, which I think is a pretty big thing.
It all sounds very like familiar, doesn't it? It's like very, very in some ways biblical, and it could certainly be regarded as like political commentary on capitalism and communism, but also the fabric of this film sort of exists in most big entertainment that we enjoy today, not just stylistically, but the themes of breaking bondage, the Messiah figure of a privileged background being brought down to earth and then kind of being the bridge between these two worlds. We see this all the time.
AI taking over workers' roles.
How good does that robot design look? I mean, if you haven't even if you haven't heard of Metropolis, you've probably seen the still image of what that robot looks like, and it's just so cool. It's just this melding of Art Deco, and even it would still be cutting edge design in film today. Like you would see this in a real art house film, and you'd be like, "Wow, this is crazy."
Those Ralph McQuarrie kind of original artwork designs for Star Wars, C-3PO essentially looks like the robot here.
So sort of like Jodorowsky's like Dune, like when you see those sketchings and they're really like angular and scary and almost Geiger inspired sort of look to things. There's this biomechanical feel to the underworld and how the machines work, and it's just amazing. You're watching this and you're like, how in Weimar Republic era Germany, where the economy was just at its worst, this is a prelude to another war obviously happening 10 years later, that how could they afford and approve a movie of this vision to be made? It's crazy, and that's so much going for your mind if you have this context behind it. And when you're watching a movie like this, you're just in complete fascination of how something like this exists.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd also shout out to, I think her name is Bridget Helm, who plays Maria, whose then likeness is used for the robot. I thought she was fantastic.
Striking,
because it's silent cinema, it's a very physical performance, but the way she plays Maria as the human embodiment and Maria as the anarchist robot, just you could differentiate the two so easily. Her eyebrows are amazing.
Well, that's the 20s
the way
thing,
she uses them. Yeah, no, I thought she was the star of the show here. Really kind of brilliant. Almost kind of musical performance to it as well.
Kind of like an olive oil Popeye performance kind of going on here. It is it's very very expressionist. It's very like arms in the air, flailing, very emoting to the camera. But that's a thing of the silent period, and I think it works for something like this. I know that at least Baz Luhrmann is a fan of this film. Definitely, like the scene where Maria, as well, the robot imposter of Maria, who is infiltrated and corrupting the upper class party scene in the city, is now like a nighttime dancer and seductress, and we get this collage overlay shots of all the men in the audience with like all the exaggerated male gaze ogling at the camera, and it really is almost
Mm.
shot for shot what Baz was doing. In Moulin Rouge, you could see like he probably was inspired by that. I'm starting to see a pattern in this BFI list, certainly as we move further and further in, that these films are here, for a reason. Their significance and their precedent that they set for future filmmakers to pick up the mantle and readapt these original ideas and kind of play with it in a modern context. It's great. You're learning so much.
Apparently Hitler liked this film as well.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't think he got it though. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like I don't think he understood the point.
He probably just thought it was, yeah,
Don't think
rising. Wasn't
I
Hitler's
think he needs
favorite?
to rewatch it.
Do you know what Hitler's favorite film of all time was? I don't know if this has changed, but I remember reading it.
Well, what? Like he's seen a new film recently?
Well, no, like somebody else picked up another book and like, no, he actually put it in his 10th diary. He said that this was his favorite.
Go on then.
Yeah.
What was his favorite?
Yeah,
film?
he revisited the list recently. His favorite film of all time is Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
Oh, okay.
But you can see that but there's reasons for that as well. He felt that the evil queen, whenever she morphed into the old hag, was a representation of Jewish people, and he kind of projected his own sort of feelings onto that, and he was cheering whenever she fell off the cliff at the end, I suppose. So
you know Hitler would, if he was around today, would be screaming like woke cinema and stuff like that on any kind of new release. And it's like, oh, there's a girl in Star Wars.
He'd be on the TYT channel. It's like hurling abuse.
Anyway, we've detracted. Metropolis shouldn't be kind of remembered for Hitler's fondness of it, but instead, cinema's fondness of it, and just how interesting and big and grandiose a sci-fi it is, and its inspiration on all the kind of big grandiose sci-fis that have come after. We've mentioned many of them already, but films like Blade Runner are heavily inspired by it as well. But yeah, I thought it was excellent. And again, it was one of those films where I was just like, I can't believe they were making this in the 20s. It's very powerful. It's very dramatic, and yeah.
What I love about like some of these larger budget silent films of this period is the Academy ratio that we get, that boxy format that lends itself to appreciating like the verticality of the screen. Like we don't get that. It's kind of missing in a lot of films nowadays, where we get these these grandiose sets that are like 30, 40 feet tall, and they're made specifically for a scene, and it's incorporated into what they're doing. Like we get this scene where all the men are working on this giant piece of steam machinery that helps run the city, and they're all trying to keep up with it, and there's rows and rows and rows of them. And with this sort of old format, you're able to really get the sort of oppressive looming of these sets over the people, and it really works in a film, I guess. And I think I remember seeing years ago the 1920s version of Phantom of the Opera, and I had this too, where people on the sets almost looked like little matchstick figures compared to how these giant, massive sets just kind of tarred over them, and it's just amazing. Yeah. We don't get that in film anymore.
I think I read somewhere there was something like 40,000 extras for this film, and they were just taking kids off the streets of Berlin and just kind of drenching them in water.
I'm sure they probably just wanted something. They were glad to have something to do because it wasn't a great time to be living in Berlin. Anyway, so
I thought the 20s was supposed to be cool in Berlin.
It was supposed to be. It was a period of expression and an artistic movement, but it was hyperinflation then, and it was the worst the economy had ever been. I remember reading a story in our history textbook and doing A level where money was basically worth nothing. It was not worth the paper it was printed on. There was this anecdote about a woman going into a shop, and she left her laundry basket of money, piles of money in her, and she went back out the shop afterwards, and the money wasn't stolen, the laundry basket was. That's how much money meant nothing. So it was not. People were killing themselves, and they were leaving the gas on in their homes and like killing themselves. And it was, yeah. I think art thrives in these environments because you need art to survive. and that's where you've got something to latch onto and something to comment and talk about. And art usually comes from a place of pain or reflection. So I don't think it's amazing that something like the scale of this was made in a country that had this sort of stuff going on in the background. It's incredible.
It's incredible, or it's kind of like, so much money just splashed on this massive gothic sci-fi. Fritz Lang's like, I'm going to spend a year making this.
Well, Fritz Lang, we can go into him a little bit more, but didn't he officially become an American civilian in 1939? Good timing. So so I think we can assume his allegiances, and obviously we might. Are any more of his films on this list? Because I think M is such a big, and Scarlet Street, The Big Heat. They're big films of his, and he kind of went on to kind of make more traditionally American type of cinema.
I'm not sure if M is on there, but again, like as with kind of the Bruce Lee's Enter the Dragon, now with Fritz Lang's Metropolis,
he's certainly an essential filmmaker.
I will endeavor to watch more, just because of how much I enjoyed these films. But yeah, I'm not sure if I can't remember if I saw M on the list or not. Let me have a quick
and long
look.
For a silent film too. And I think that was a lot of the criticism at the time. People weren't used or trained to seeing silent films went on for 2.5 hours long, and it's quite ambitious to do that. I think.
I lied. M is on there, so we are going to be getting
so we'll be
another
revisiting
Fritz Lang in the future, which is quite exciting. Not a million miles off. So yeah, man, loving it. Loving watching all these kind of films, some of which I should have watched many years ago, Metropolis being one of those. But yeah. Do you have any kind of intrigue to watch the kind of MTV version of Metropolis where they added like a bunch of Queen songs and made it into more of a rock opera?
Was that was Freddie Mercury involved in that?
Something like that, yeah.
Was this in the 70s or 80s? Personally, no. Really, it seems like I had a little look at it online, and it seems like something that's a product of the time, and sort of like, I maybe if it was on TV. I know there's an anime version of the story that came out in 2002. That's kind of really well regarded adaptation of the original material. So yeah, I might be worth in the future, but but I think I've had those.
Yeah, no, that's fair enough. Have you seen there was like Zane Lowe from BBC Radio 1 did like a remix of Drive? Like he added new songs. I have no interest. I have no interest in that. Drive is such a good film and it's got such good songs to it. I just don't try and swap them out for something else.
Yeah, you're not too for grace. You can't make a movie better.
Yeah. I think I sold a Christmas tree to Zane Lowe once.
Oh right. Okay.
Or at least I was there as it was happening.
When did you sell Christmas trees?
That was one of my first jobs. Yeah.
Christmas tree salesman.
Yeah, for a fruit and veg
store. Right.
Yeah,
Okay. I remember you worked. You said you worked there. Okay.
I
did the Christmas tree thing.
It was one of my colleagues was serving him, and I helped grab a couple trees out. But the whole time when you're looking at someone and you're going, I think I recognize you, and it didn't click till later. I was like, I think that's Zane Lowe. So there you go.
Was it a good tree?
Probably. Yeah, all the trees were good trees, Chris. All the trees were.
That's true.
I sold one to Plymouth Argyle striker from kind of the mid 2000s, Mickey Evans.
Oh,
so I was pretty happy about that because that was he was the striker of Plymouth Argyle back when I was a massive fan and massive fan of.
Get that smirk off your face.
So I was pretty happy about that one. To be fair, he was a local legend.
I don't have any stories I got, but I too did the Christmas tree thing for a Christmas temporal before, and I quite liked pulling them through the nets and tying them. It was such an easy job.
Wait, you sold Christmas trees?
Yeah, I did a Christmas temp job for.
What?
No, it was part of we sold other things, but at Christmas we sold trees.
Oh, okay. I was about to say I thought we were having the same life for a minute. Then our early jobs were exactly the same.
No, we worked at toys, we worked with Barbies, and we're talking about Fritz Lang. But no, Metropolis, another great hit. on the list. I think it's fair to say that we both equally loved it. Fairly few negatives to say about it.
No, not at all. Not at all. But yeah, your politics are kind of skewed at the end there.
yeah. There's sort of there's a vagueness towards that at the end, but I do think it does skew one way or the other. But I think it's really cool as well. For anybody who's going to catch up with this, just be warned, there are a lot of sections of the film that look damaged, and that's because I think it was 20% of the film, or 10% of the film was lost for much of its life. And they managed to, I think only about 10 years ago, recover some of the rest of the film from an Argentinian museum and use it to restore the film to kind of pretty much, it's 95% of the original cut now.
Yeah, I think there's like one scene where it comes up and kind of tells you what happened.
But apart from that, it's pretty seamless. I actually quite liked almost like, it's like whenever you play like a modern video game remaster now and you get those toggle buttons, like this is what it used to look like, this is what the remaster looks like. And it makes you actually just really, really appreciate how much work and effort goes into restoring these films and like restoring them to their former glory. So, you know, it didn't get detracted by it. I actually think it kind of landed to the experience.
100%. Loved it. Loved the look and feel. That was brilliant. So, I think we should wrap it up there, Chris. Looking forward to, not having a break next week. I don't know what I'm trying to say. But yeah, no.
Seeing more films and talking about more films.
Really enjoying just kind of chatting with you again and catching up about the movies.
We played Fortnite the other night. That was quite nice.
Yeah. All right. Don't let everyone know we're a bunch of losers.
Not unironically playing Fortnite. I'm not ashamed to say.
Jesus. I am.
Oh dear.
But yeah, this has been the Film Angle for this week. You can catch us on Instagram, catch us on TikTok. We are on Threads, but not really. Let history be shown. Our kind of enthusiasm for Threads go further and further down the drain. So yeah, make sure to catch up with us on those platforms. Rate and review us where you can. If you're on Spotify, there's usually a question underneath, and you can also give us a little star rating. On Apple, you can review us, and it just helps kind of new listeners find us as well.
Exactly.
And it's always nice to know.
We had some engagement with the Barbenheimer poll with what would you rate it, and there was some interesting different reactions to that. So we like to see what our sort of audience kind of listen to, or what they,
and nice to know that people are listening sometimes.
Yes.
But yeah, no, all good. But yeah, that has been the Film Angle for this week. My name's Alex,
and I'm Chris.
Guten Nacht.
I'm going to let you dig your own grave there, and I'm just going to say goodbye.
It was because it was a German movie.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye.
Auf Wiedersehen.